Today we've come down to Blickling Hall to talk you through arguably what is one of the most popular styles of fishing at the moment, which is long distance feeder fishing. In today's episode we're going to be targeting bream and it's off to a flyer of a start, but I'm going to slip this one back and get into the session where hopefully we're going to talk you through some tips and tactics to help you put some more fish on the bank. So if you are looking to get into this long distance feeder fishing for yourself, then the most important thing is to think about the hardware and the tackle that you're using. Now, I am not saying by any imagination that you have to go out and spend money on big expensive gear, but you do need the right equipment for the job. So for today's example, I've got a Horizon XD class 13 foot 130 gram rod. Now a 13 foot makes a huge difference over a 12 foot to help you get those extra yards. And then so 130 grams is more than enough to punch these feeders through the wind at the distance that we need. Now to couple with that is I've got a Horizon 6000 reel, which is basically a mini big pit reel, and the large spool gets less friction as it comes off the reel and again increasing more yardage. Now the last thing is, if I could, I would like to use a braided mainline and a shock leader. The braid is really thin diameter, and then a strong shock leader gives you that extra security that you can cast hard and not worry about any mishaps throughout the day. But unfortunately here at this venue we're not allowed to use braided mainline, so my choice is just a strong reliable 8-pound line, and it gives me confidence that again I can hit these feeders hard against the clip and nothing is going to go wrong throughout the session. So like I said, it's not all about spending loads of money, but it is about having the right equipment for the job. So taking a closer look at the rig itself, it's just as important as the hardware to get right for this style of fishing. So we'll start off with the feeder, and I've actually got Horizon 50 gram feeder, and I like to call these bullet feeders basically, because all the weight is at one end. It's cone shaped, which means it aerodynamically pushes through the air, and it just helps you get to that spot that little bit easier. That then comes down and sliding free running up the line on a strong feeder link, which is just run above and buffered up against 3 little float stops. I've got a swivel protector bead and a couple of float stops, and basically what they do is they create a pivot point so my hook link doesn't tangle around that link or the feeder. It's really important to make sure your rig is ultra tangle proof. That then comes down to a really small swivel, and again I feel that's quite important because it stops your line twist. When you're winding these feeders back a long way through the water, it can really tend to twist up your hook link. So that swivel just eliminates exactly what it's meant to do. Now the hook link itself, today I've gone for a 2-foot hook link, but hook link length is something you're going to have to play with on the day because there is no right or wrong answer. But as a general good starting point, 2 foot won't put you too far wrong. And then that comes down to a really strong and reliable size 14 hook. Now this one is designed to put a couple of maggots onto it, but there's one last tip I would do when I do this long distance fishing. If I was going to fish a worm, I would use a strong quick stop and I would hair rig it. That is one of the best tips I've ever been given, but when you're really punching these rigs out, your worms tend to flick back round and mask your hook point, but when you hair rig them, it literally doesn't do that at all. So just make your rig really simple, it works really well, and it does exactly what you want it to do. So when it comes to looking at the bait for your session, it really is quite venue dependent. but I personally don't think you can go far wrong with sort of a natural, traditional bream style banquet. Now that would consist of maggots, chopped worms, casters and pinkies. They're probably my absolute favourite, and they all get carried in a dark natural ground bait. I've got ultra confidence if I'm bream fishing, I can take that anywhere and it's going to do me a bite. But the only thing that I would say is, especially in today's modern angling, a lot of carp anglers are fishing these style waters for big carp, and you can guarantee that they're using pellets and sweet corn. So I do like to bring with me a few pellets, a few grains of corn, and throughout the day I'll introduce a few of those if I feel it's going to get me an extra bite, and there's certainly situations that that's made a difference. In the way that you're feeding these baits, bream are well known for being shoal fish, pretty confident, so I like to be relatively aggressive with it. I've started the session off with perhaps 7 or 8 larger feeders, and I'm going to be plopping my feeder over the top of that same sort of spot. And then loading the feeder itself, I don't actually put all of those particles straight into my ground bait, because I like to be able to control how many particles I'm putting in, so you can adapt it to your session. You can put more in if there's more fish, drop it back if there's less. What I actually do is I just put a pinch of each inside the ground bait, and then that gets sort of sandwiched and capped off with a bit of dark ground bait on the top. And like I said, rather than piling it all in and just having loads of particle, give yourself the option to be able to switch your baiting pattern up to suit how your fishing's going. Okay, so once you've got all of your baits sorted, your hardware and your rig sorted, it's really important to make sure that you can plop that feeder in exactly the same spot every time. I cannot stress enough how important it is to get accurate with your casting. Unfortunately, that does take practice, so that's probably the first tip. Get yourself out there and get practicing your accuracy. But a few little tips to help you along the way is, first of all, pick yourself a far bank marker. So for today, for example, I've got an empty swim on the far side, which has got a post right in the middle of it. And I would be as sort of vigilant as that. Try and hit the post, not a big area. Try and get a really accurate spot. So that's what I'm casting on today. And then I'm actually clipped up at the distance. Now, what I've done at the start of the session, I found where I wanted to fish, and then my rod holder is actually a smart mark system, which means I can put distance sticks in at a desired length and wrap around there until I get to the line clip, and then I count how many wraps that is. So when you're fishing at this sort of long range, it's inevitable that eventually something's going to go wrong in a session or another, and there is nothing worse than catching a few fish, getting the swim rocking, something goes wrong and you didn't know, for one, how far you were out fishing, and two, what line you were casting out. So a couple of really simple tips, but apply them to your fishing, get that accuracy going, and it will definitely catch you more fish. The last couple of tips we'll talk through are probably the most simple tips out there, but ones that are often overlooked and not taken enough into consideration. The first one would be regularity of casting. Now, I personally use a stopwatch because it's quite regimental and it makes you actually physically look how long you've been casting. So it's so easy for a match or a pleasure session to sort of daydream, and before you know it, 5 or 10 minutes has passed and you know, it might not be regular enough. So the stopwatch, for one, allows me to keep on how long these casts have been going on for, and two, how quick my bites have been coming. So if I've had 5 or 6 bites after 3 or 4 minutes, I don't want to be leaving my rig out there for 10 minutes because it could be tangled, for example. So it's a really good practice to get yourself looking at how long it takes to get bites. And then lastly, again, really simple, but bream are massive shoal fish. Personally, when I'm fishing, I'm trying to get a hit together, not just catch 1 or 2 fish. So if you feel it's gone a bit quiet, you feel you should be catching more, don't be afraid to take your hook link off, whip yourself out 5 or 6 big feeders again, and just kickstart that whole session up, hopefully bringing those fish back into the swim. And if you put all of those tips together, you should be in for some good days fishing. Well, there we go. What a great way to end the day. It has been fairly tricky. We've had to switch a few things up to keep bites coming, but putting all those tips into practice, and we've had a few bream, which was the target for the day. So if you're looking into getting to long distance feeder fishing, it certainly is a good way to spend a few hours fishing.